48 Hours correspondent Richard Schlesinger joins me now. I remember when Pedro Hernandez's name was brought up when he was brought in, and I think everyone thought, finally an end to this case.
Yeah, it was strange because a lot of people thought the case had been solved when Jose Ramos was identified. I mean, this guy was an ideal suspect. Had the background, had a connection to the Patz family. So for years, for decades really, people thought he was the guy. So I was fascinated by how they sort of wrapped their minds around the fact that he may not have been the guy, that Pedro Hernandez might be the guy. The whole investigation had to shift. Yeah. It's an incredible story.
So what was the problem with his confession? We hear that Hernandez, we hear that he had mental illness problems. So what was the problem?
Well, there were two main problems that the defense raised. One was that before they turned on the video cameras and videotaped that confession that you just saw, he was in the prosecutor's office for 6 hours. No lawyer, no videotape, no nothing. They want to know what happened in those 6 hours.
Of course.
And the other issue was his defense lawyer made a huge point in the trial about his mental condition and his intellect. I mean, he has a fairly low IQ. And the defense attorney said that he was highly suggestible. So you combine those two, 6 hours without anybody knowing what's going on, and a guy who's in that kind of condition, that's the defense's theory.
Yeah, could be the recipe for a false confession. Yeah. But had he told other people that he did something bad to a little boy?
He did. And the prosecution, that was the basis of the prosecution's case. So he had told members of his church group, his ex-wife, and a friend that he had done something bad to a boy. Never named Etan Patz. But he said that he had done something bad to a boy many years ago. So the defense said that there's nothing corroborating that statement, that he could have just been coerced into confessing.
Right.
The interesting thing was that the prosecution's whole theory was he corroborated himself. His words corroborated his words.
Oh, that's
because he had told so many people over so many years that made it believable.
That's interesting. You interviewed law enforcement officers who have been working this case over generations, really. A 6-year-old boy killed. I mean, it's heartbreaking. It must have had an emotional impact on these guys.
That was the most amazing thing about this story. These guys had never spoken in depth about this case on television before. And, so many years later, there are police officers in this hour, hardened detectives, NYPD detectives, who break down, even now, 7 years or so after the disappearance. Even now, because they're all fathers. One of the original detectives on the case had a son who was Etan's age. And, I mean, it's like almost 40 years later now, and he still gets emotional when he talks about seeing his son for the first time after he got on this case.
I can see it being all-consuming.
Yeah.
Thank you very much,
Thanks for having me.